Hello, my friends. I am here with a brand new friend, someone I've never met before, Jeff Dess. I was introduced by James Rivalata, and here's the cool thing. So in the last 30 minutes, Jeff, I want you to know this, because like you're adjusting, I'm adjusting. My internet went down in this building. I'm in a place called the Global Education Center in Nashville, Tennessee. The
Okay.
internet goes down, so then I'm using a Wi-Fi hotspot for a couple other interviews. Then I realized that it's just the thing that's in my side of the building. So I hustle over to this other side of the building, find out that I can plug in this kitchen over here. So right now I'm in like a teacher's lounge, right? I'm in a teacher's
Wow.
lounge. So this is like, right? So I'm glad that we're meeting in this space where I'm totally not prepared, right? Because
Right.
this is my first interview speaking with somebody who I'm meeting for the first time. So
Right.
I want to know all about you. Like, I know that you're an amazing speaker, right? I know that you're a friend of James Rivalata. You know, like, I know all these things.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Right now I'm in Jersey City, New Jersey. So
Yeah,
I'm a New Yorker,
right on.
but to be in Jersey City, I've been in Jersey City for a while now. But as a New Yorker, it's always strange to say that I'm a New Jersey resident. But I'm a New Jersey guy right now.
Yeah, but you can see Manhattan from Jersey City, right?
I can. Right outside of my window is the Statue of Liberty. So I'm
Oh,
still holding on. Still holding on.
cool. So the mission behind all these gatherings of higher ed speakers and advisors and professionals is that we realize that we're in a really interesting time in our country. Um, for the pandemic, for one, and going back to school soon and greeting students, whether it's virtual or online, but also where we are as a country in terms of social justice and race and police and politics. Um, what have you been doing this summer? What have you been up to?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It's funny because the summertime, you don't even know when the summer happened. Like, when did we become summer? It's just like all of the time started to mesh into one area. So for
Yeah.
me, the summertime, it's really two things. So I wear two hats.
Mhm.
And hat number one is as the co-founder and the chief education officer at Trill or Not Trill, a leadership institute that my business partner and I started. So for Trill or Not Trill, that was it for us. The summer has been about pivoting. That's a famous word. That's a popular term
Yeah.
that everybody's been using. But for us, I think we weren't really pivoting. We just took another step. We knew exactly what we needed to do. So, instead of pivoting, it was just adapting and innovating. So for me, in a Trill or Not Trill hat, that was it. It was just saying, like, let's continue to follow our mission, and our mission will lead us into the direction that we need to go. So it wasn't really a pivot. It was just more
Yeah.
of a, let's take a step. I
Right.
also wear a hat as the director for the Center for Leadership and Engagement at New Jersey City University. So I still work at a traditional higher ed
Yeah.
college 4-year institution. And that has been a little bit more challenging insofar as that you really just start to think about the health and safety of your staff and your students. And
Yeah.
so for me, that has been like the number one priority. And then just thinking about where it's in an urban area in the middle of a city, and there's a lot of Black and Latinx students. So we also had to deal with the summertime of having these conversations of social justice when the students weren't in the room. So being able to create virtual programming, virtual engagement, virtual leadership, and virtual social justice conversations, that's what the summer has been. It's really just been this uh, info dump of just
Yeah.
emotions and
Yeah.
culture and conversation. So it's been adventurous, to say the least.
Yeah. Have certain ideas sort of risen to the top for what you're excited about and what you would say like, hey, we've come to this conclusion on our campus. This is something everybody should be thinking about in terms of their
Yeah,
programming.
yeah. I think on campus. So just thinking about it from working with campuses and being on a campus, right? So I think putting these worlds together, what we're doing on our campus and what I've seen happen. Some of the things that I really think are important are watching how faculty and staff are able to adapt to technology and do so in a way that is cost effective.
Mhm.
So how can we figure out how to use the resources that we have and do so without spending this exorbitant amount of money. So for me, that's really what, I've been telling my staff and looking at our team is there are ways to really reshape this entire conversation of what it means to be engaging our students and doing so in a way that is not going to break our pockets. That's number one. And then number two is something that I've always believed in, something that's always led my leadership conversation and mission personally, is the ability to listen to the students. So, I watched so many higher ed professionals specifically run into these places trying to figure out what to do next. And how do I get, can we do yoga online? And can we do, karaoke on Zoom? And as important as that is, the thing that mattered most to me was, what are the students doing? So, they were the ones that were dictating the culture. They were the ones who are digital natives. They were the ones who understand. They are the ones who understand exactly what they want and where we need to go. So for me, it wasn't even about creating these new switches and how to transform this. It was just, let's call some students and see what they're doing. So, you start seeing it, and there are students that have these huge YouTube pages and followings. And I was like, listen, y'all are about, I'll give you some money from our budget to produce a YouTube show for us. Or, if y'all are entrepreneurs, instead of us trying to figure that stuff out, let's just go directly to the source.
Right. I mean, you're the first person to even use the language digital native. Like in all the interviews that have been happening over the last couple of weeks, it's a really great perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Our students are at home. Right, they're at home and they're digital natives. Right, it's a really great way of seeing it. Like, let's check in with them and see what they're doing, and support it.
Yeah. I mean, they sorry, Jay. Yeah, but they know better than us. They as cool as we think we are, and as fresh as we think we are, those students just know that much better. So I always look at myself as an educator, and as an educator, it's just being able to figure out how to turn some of the things that they're doing into these educational components. So if they have this YouTube, I had this one student who had this amazing YouTube page about makeup tutorials and also about lifestyle. And I said, listen, we can turn this into some learning. We could throw some learning outcomes behind this, and let's turn this into a real thing. And let's have some conversations. And it was a hit for us.
That's cool. And I think for schools across the country, like, let's just take a small college in rural America. It's finding those students who are creating, right? Because there are many students who are not creating YouTube channels that are consumers of information. They're passive consumers, right? So really, like, you were lucky to find that student, or maybe you already knew them, but maybe on our smaller campuses, or is to seek out those students who are the creators.
Yeah, in this day and age, in that rural city of America, there's a student right now who probably has the largest sneaker collection in the Midwest or something like that. Or there's a student, you know what I mean? They have access to every type of cultural relevant content that's out there. So, they may not have the YouTube page, but, those are the students that I call upon when I need to, I got sneakers in the background. So when I got students that are like, listen, I need some, when I'm like, listen, I need to know what the newest kicks are, I call my students up and I find out what's going on. Or if, if the students are the ones that are telling me, I watch all of these esports groups and companies popping up, and I'm just like, the esports companies are it. But I'm calling my students and they're like, listen, get on Twitch and hop on Twitch, and that's where we are. So if you really want to get us, if you want to get this particular group, that's where we got to go. So, we have to innovate in the way that's going to be beneficial to our students. So at NJCU, with Trill or Not Trill, that's really just been the focus, is to find out where is the core values, what are the core values of our students, what is the core values that are aligned with their interests, and then let's create programming. And that's where we come in, right? So those of us who are veterans in higher ed or in creating programming or speakers or things of that nature. We have to look at what is happening, and then now we have to input all of that stuff, all of those master's degrees in higher ed and all those random degrees that we've got and all those years of speaking on college campuses. All of that has to be poured into what already exists.
Right, that's great. It's all. I mean, one of the ways that I'm seeing it as you're speaking, I'm envisioning that there's already a train, and we can't change the direction of the train. We can't just say, "Hey, train, we're going to go this way." Best thing for us to do is get on the train, right?
That's it.
And
That's
add
it.
stuff to and add some cabooses here. You know, when there's a crossroads coming up, we can advise. You know,
Exactly.
yeah, that's really really neat. Yeah, and you're doing your own programs as well, right?
Yes.
As a workshop facilitator, leadership speaker.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
It's going amazingly well. You know,
Yeah.
one of the things is that I always tell people, with me, you're going to get two things. You're going to get high levels of energy, right? So I'm always going to be high level, in your face type of energy. So for us, that's really been key. A key factor is working with our facilitators and our team and saying, you know, I want you to bring that. You have to bring whatever energy level you had, you have to bring it up that much more because you're behind this screen, right? So people need to feel you through the Zoom. So for us, it's been tremendous because, you know, we've been able to start to identify partners outside of traditional higher ed spaces and say, let's create some synergy together. So it's been talking to media companies, it's been talking to the brands, and just recognizing this. And if we want to target 17 to 25-year-olds, then let's find out what the 17 and 25-year-olds are doing. So we at Trill or Not Trill, one of the biggest things, and I'll never forget, Jason, man, we used to get so much criticism for this, right? People were like, you're not gonna last if you follow pop culture. You have to have something that's sustainable. And I was like, there's nothing more sustainable than pop culture. It's been the most sustainable thing in cultural history. So we have to recognize, all right, listen, you know, we just shifted a little bit. So for us, it's just been recognizing what's happening. So looking at the conversation about, you know, social justice, the moment that we started to see the nation flip a little bit in the conversation after George Floyd, we were ready for that because we already were in conversations with people who were doing the work. So it wasn't us saying, now let's create this anti-racist training lab, which we have. It was, let's call all of our partners in a room and say, can we do something to help our young people because they need it? And that's where the real work is going to come. That's why I always tell higher ed professionals, it's the work that you do is built upon the network that you keep. And that's going to really shift how you create that work. So it's not up to me because, you know, our offices are often limited in budget, limited in staff. We don't, you know, student affairs has always seemed to be the one that's the lowest on the totem pole. So for me, I get all of those resources by calling my friend at the neighboring university or at the sister school or at the school that's out west and saying, what are you doing? Or can you come facilitate something for my students and I'll come facilitate something for your students? And listen, we can't, you know, I don't have the budget, you don't have the budget, but let's work together. That's how it happens. So for us, it's like, as long as you keep your finger to the pulse, right? And you understand what's happening, then you know everybody in the room. You know, you just know who's doing it. All right, we need to have a conversation about this. This is who I need to pick up the phone for. And if it's about students who are Black or who are white or who are LGBTQ, who are poor, who has the best experience with those types of students, I'm calling them up. So it's, you know, we can't always rely on ourselves to do everything.
Yeah, I think that's great advice on growing your network. You know, for professionals across the country, spend time actively all the time trying to meet new people out of your circle of strengths, right? Out of the circle of what you know. You know, and I don't in any way want to throw us under the bus as professional speakers, right? But I work at a summer camp too, and we utilize a group of 5 camps in our region in Maine, where I'll go to another camp and do a staff training, and one of their counselors will come to our camp and do a staff training, right? For lunch, you know, because we don't have the resources, but we also recognize that our students hear our voices all the time, or our staff hear our voices all the time, and how important it is to include other educators into the lessons that we teach our students. So that's your message about using your network is hugely important in our conversation in all these interviews. So thank you for for mentioning that.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to even with the facilitators, right? So even the outside people that you bring into the conversation,
Yeah.
keep a relationship with them as well, because I have resources that you may say like, Jeff, I can't afford your rate, you know what I mean? But I know 10 other people that are really dope that you
Yeah.
can afford. So
Yeah,
that so it's just like the conversations just have to expand, and sometimes we get caught into these spaces, like you said, where we're in our own circles, or we look at vendors as just vendors. And for me, I'm like, listen, I'm an educator. So, if I can't necessarily fit what you want, that doesn't mean that I don't want your students to be amazing. So let me give you some other amazing people in case I can help.
Yeah.
So let's just keep this conversation going and growing.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Hey, can I get to know you a little better? Can I? Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, where did you go to high school?
Sure. So, as I said earlier, I'm a New Yorker, born and raised in Jamaica, Queens, New York. My family moved to Long Island. So I went to high school at Elmont Memorial High School in Nassau County, Long Island, New York.
Yeah.
I was a rapper. I was a hip hop head. I always thought that I was going to be this rapper. I had a career. I went to St. John's University in Queens, New York, thinking that, went in there wanting to be a high school teacher that was going to go back and coach high school basketball, teach high school English. And that was the goal. And then I got to college, embraced my rap career, rapped and did all that. But while I was doing that, I was also a student leader. So I was a RA, student government, president of our Black Student Union, did the whole thing. And that's kind of where I got the higher ed, student affairs bug. But I still wanted to be creative, and I always wanted to write, and I was a poet and a rapper.
Yeah.
I eventually stopped rapping so that I can go to grad school. So I chose grad school over rap. I don't know, I think about that decision all the time, and I'm still happy that I chose grad school.
Yeah.
And I studied English literature. So I was an English lit guy. I'm a writer. I've written 5 books of poetry. So, so when I started looking at my life, I was just like, what is it that I wanted to do? And I always knew, I'm also Haitian. I'm of Haitian descent. And, my parents came to this country in the 1970s as immigrants and really, reshaped our ideas of what it means to be successful. And part of that success was, drive and education. So I wanted to be an educator. My family is filled with educators. My sister is an educator. But I also wanted to be a performer. So I just did not know how to put these two worlds together. I wanted to rap. I wanted to be a poet. I wanted to talk. I wanted to teach. So for me, it's just been my life in a nutshell is just a lot of talking, a lot of writing, and a lot of educating, right? If you put it all together, that's really what encapsulates me the most. And that's kind of, the short story of me going from all of that, trying to figure out how to do all of that, those things. And I was a hall director. I did Res Life, and I did all of the dirty jobs of higher ed, the early, no sleep nights, and just tried to figure out what that was going to turn to. And that's kind of what led to what I'm doing today. And, looking at the title of my job at NJCU and creating Trill or Not Trill is really, in essence, a space for me to say, I want people to be leaders, but I also want them to have some fun and enjoy themselves and be entertained all at the same time. And that's kind of where we are today.
And that's where you are now. And now I understand why James introduced us. Yeah. I do. Yeah, it's like I'm looking in a mirror. It's like I'm looking in a mirror. Yeah, the artist educator. You can't see in my other world. There's a guitar behind me, and it's.
I've seen it. I've seen the pictures, man.
But my degree from college was in secondary ed English.
There you go.
And I graduated from college knowing that I was going to be an English teacher, coach, and a summer camp counselor. But in my senior year, I was in a band, and the band said, "Hey, will you take a year off? Like, don't get a job. Let's play with the band." We made a CD. And then we booked shows a year ahead, and then 13 albums later, anyway. Yeah, but I'm still like, that's why, like, I love that. That's what, probably what makes you a really great presenter and speaker is that you've been in front of so many crowds as an entertainer and figured out how to engage the audience, right, and not lose your audience. And that's sort of. What are some of the things that you do in this platform that could help an advisor who doesn't think they're a performer?
Yeah. So, some tips are to perform when nobody's watching, right? So what I
Yeah.
love about things like Zoom here, it's really and all these other platforms is, just perform, like practice. I can't stress the importance of practicing what it looks like to talk in front of an audience, right? So that's number one, is just keep looking, figure out where the camera is, understand what your sound looks like, prepare yourself. If you need headphones or not, you get a microphone or not, like all of that. Just like, that's the number one thing I'm going to tell people as they're transitioning into this digital space, is to really get yourself prepared. I've got my ring light going
Yep.
just so that I can be better on this space. So as a performer, your natural talent gets you but so far. And when you get onto stage, you start to realize how much the sound person matters. You get to realize how much the engineer is important. You get to realize why the lighting person makes sense, because before you just showed up and just rocked the mic, or just played whatever you had to play and
Yeah.
entertained. And then you get to like real bigger venues, and they're like, here's your headset. I'm like, here's my headset. Here's your earpiece. What do you mean your earpiece? Here, your microphone level. Don't hold your microphone like this. Hold your microphone like that. And those little differences are the reasons why your professional performers are different than your amateur performers.
Yeah.
And that's what I started to learn, was like, as I started to get into this digital space as an educator even more, I said, yeah, I got to get a mic. I got to get a better camera. I got to get all of these things. So I don't know, and some of them are inexpensive. So I think some of it is, if you have it in your own pocket, you can get a mic for under $100. You can get a camera. So all of these things are things that you can do. So that's number one, is just prepare yourself. I think the second, yes. And then I think one more thing. I think the second thing is, as a performer, what I've learned is, what is it that you want? What is your performance? So, Trill or Not Trill is dropping a book, quick plug, called We Wear Kicks to Work, right? Boom. And when we talk about wearing kicks to work, it's really about embracing your authenticity and presenting that in front of people. So for me, my performance wasn't going around the hallway rapping. It was going around the hallway rocking sneakers with my suits. And that's where I started to connect with my students. So your performance is that depending on how much you want to bring into it, but let's say you're a professional that has tattoos, then come in and do an interview with a tattoo artist and talk to them about your tattoos, and talk to them about what tattoos mean, or have the tattoo artist talk about their process. And you can say, hey, listen, this is my tattoo. This is what it means to me. Does anybody have tattoos? Or would you have and have that conversation? And then that's a program. And that's a program that's different than probably what people are used to. And it's also something that's meaningful to you if you love tattoos, or if you love, if you're a barber or whatever it is. The performance isn't, let's go into the social change model of leadership, or let's go into this particular program that has been around for 25 years. It's, let's input some of those pieces into the things that we do so amazingly well. So, talking about James, he's an improv comedian and rapper, and add that into your piece. If you like improv, do improv. You don't have to, you can either not have to hire the improv person to come in and speak, or bring in the improv expert facilitator to come in, and then you participate, and then that's how you perform. Your best performances, I think, come from when you love what you do, and that's how you bring that into the educational spaces as well.
Yeah, it's really nice. You're encouraging everyone to be uniquely, amazingly themselves. I mean, really. So, but what is, like, practice and bring yourself to the game, right? Bring your personality, and be authentic. So on the practice note, I really think this is a good lesson for all of us, because I have had the opportunity to practice so much. The thing that I had to do today in moving into this new room, right? If I had to shift where I was presenting from and really worry about the space too much, then I'd be then what I've realized is the most important thing about what we do is what we're talking about, right? What we're presenting, right? This looks like a fake background, but like this is a little doll, right? Like, I didn't plan that. This is stored in this room. Like, there's a cat over there. Like, I think that's one of those old binder machines, But it's really interesting. Like, I think in the practice.
My kitchen is right here. I just literally grabbed this.
But really, seriously, practice makes you comfortable. Practice makes you confident. Forget perfection. Let's not talk about that. We can talk about that for another couple hours. But
Yeah.
yeah, practice makes comfortable, right?
And that's the key, is that I think
Yeah.
we often think, I always think about athletes in this case, where sometimes people feel as if like a LeBron James is just naturally talented. It's like one of my least favorite phrases is
Yeah.
when they say, man, they're just so naturally talented. I'm like, LeBron James isn't the only 6'8", 200 something pound guy in the world. There's probably thousands of those guys, but there's a difference between him and the others. And one of the
Right.
big pieces is, he learned how to play and then practice, right? And,
Practice.
and I think that's one of the key things that we'll learn is
Right.
that you'll get comfortable because you'll start to know this is where the light works. This is where my mic works. This is where the camera should be. This is where I should, then you look and you're like, maybe I want to add something to my background, or maybe I want to. And then what happens is that also helps you prepare yourself for situations like both of us had. I think I lost you there for a second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I think it prepares you for situations like both of us had where, last minute you're like, uh-oh, I have to move, or uh-oh, this doesn't work. And you feel more comfortable now because I'm just like, it's only going to take me 2 minutes to get all of this settled. As opposed to, oh my God, here's the thing. And that's a natural reaction to have if you haven't done it. So just keep practicing and you'll get there.
Yeah, but I also think it is important to consider like the position of your camera, showing up ready, showing up present.
Yeah.
Like, I encourage all advisors and folks who are leading anything to show up ready to be in charge, and to be able to be seen so that your students can see you and that you are and ready to be heard.
Yeah, we owe it to our students. And that's one thing I always tell my students is that they have to make sure that they are talking to their advisors and to the institutions and making them recognize that, I'm paying for a service here also. So as a higher ed professional, I pride myself in knowing that I owe it to my students. I owe it to my students to be prepared. That's part of my job, is to make sure that I'm at my best. And in addition to that, it's now my students are online. So, and some, depending on the institution, some have hiring freezes, some have tuition increases, some have tuition free. It's all over the place. But whatever the price you're paying, you could be paying $20 to go to college or $10,000 to go to college. If you're paying to go to school, you deserve to get an experience that is going to be transformative. And that's one of the things that it's very difficult for sometimes educators to think of, because you might not love the institution that you're at. You may not love the experience that you're receiving. But at the end of the day, the main reason we do the job is for the students. We can go corporate and make the money elsewhere. We can quit our jobs and become entertainers and have the fun and love. But if you stay in this educational realm, the main reason you're in it is for those students. And for me, that's really what it is. So every time I think about, how to answer this email, how to handle this Zoom call, how to make sure that we're scheduled on time for this retreat, how do I pick the facilitators that are coming in to speak to my types of students? When I think of all of those things, all I'm thinking of, or one of the main things I'm thinking about, is how do I make sure that I'm serving them right? And I just feel like if my camera wasn't proper, if my lighting was off, if my sound was terrible, then I'm just thinking about it like, I've done that student a disservice. It's like if I were to go to a fancy restaurant expecting lobster and steak, and they put out chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes from the freezer, I might feel like, man, y'all did me dirty here, So our students are expecting the lobster and steak for the most part.
Yeah, so that's a great motto. We should just bring the steak.
That's it.
That's our motto. Bring the steak and lobster. But I do think that we are all struggling. So many folks across the country are struggling because we don't know what's going on. But your point about building your network and reaching out to other people for support, like not isolating yourself, because there's a lot of smaller schools out there where folks may be listening to our conversation saying like, oh, it's easier for you guys. You're both outgoing and, you got a lot of friends that you have a lot of colleagues. You already get institutional support, but you can build the support outside of your institution.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a lot easier than we think. So, Facebook is always it, right? So these Facebook groups, I mean, and that's why I first saw the work that you were doing was through a Facebook group. And, even if you're not actively speaking in there, every day there's somebody saying, here are the resources. Here's an email address if you need some help. Here's where I can go. Here are some speakers that are doing amazing work. Here's what's out. Here's my plan. Here's what my plan looks like on my campus. And so, you know, I've been on those Facebook groups, and I've been on social media and Twitter, just trying to understand. And, you know, and I recognize that, because at Trill or Not Trill, we're also launching this fall. You know, we're creating a new space for educators as well. So, you know, that's another thing too. I recognize the importance of those spaces. And yeah, you're right. You know, we know a lot of people. We've been around and we've seen some things. But you know, I think if you're, my advice to those of you who are in those smaller institutions, you know, the biggest thing is to just keep watching the trends, right? So follow the hashtags and follow what other people are doing, and then insert yourself in that conversation, even if it's not this majorly vocal way, but just get into that space and just have some, you know, quick conversations and just watch, you know what I mean? So for me, a lot of it has just been watching as well.
It's great. And be open to learning stuff you just don't know. Right? Yeah,
man. You know, Jason, you can't call yourself, and, you know, not to call educators out, but, you know, because we're in a pandemic. So I'm very sympathetic to people's needs right now. So I'm not talking to those of you who are in maybe particular situations. I get the stress. I mean, you're at home, you have it, you know, you don't know what the future is like, health concerns. And then also, you know, just as a Black man in this country, I also recognize the stress and the mental health issues that are dealing with institutional racism and systemic racism regularly, let alone the 24-hour news cycles that we're dealing with right now. And we have an election coming up, so there's a lot of anxiety in people's thoughts. So I get that. So I don't want to be rude to those individuals who are dealing with all that. That's a lot of us. But, you know, one of the things that I have to stress is that if you're in education, right? And it's tough to be in education, but if you're in it, you have to do some work. And part of that work is you have to continue to learn, you know, so you have to learn yourself. So for me, I had to adapt because I'm an educator. I can't properly educate if I'm not learning myself. So, you know, I had to go online and watch YouTube videos and say, this is the best light. This is how you add a camera. This is how you get into conversations. If you're somebody that also has not problems, but you're a little apprehensive about, you know, engaging in conversations with folks, you know, the internet is good for that. I'll tell you that. The internet's bad for a lot, but it's really good for this piece of just gaining information. And I've read so many articles, watched so many YouTube videos, and just said, all right, let me learn this. Let me do this. And I'm somebody who's comfortable having conversations. And I'm still trying to learn how to do it even better.
Yeah. That's great. Hey, I've appreciated our time together.
Yeah,
it's been really, really informative. Great nuggets of information and nuggets of knowledge. And I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay.
But don't leave this meeting.
Got it.
Right? So everybody out there is going to be like, oh, what are they going to talk about next? It's the secret handshake. All right? All right. Well, thanks for being here. Let's wave to everybody who's watching this. Thanks.